Hey, I'm Hides. I am the development specialist in peer support and inclusion here at SCIA.
Hi, I'm Laura. I'm a senior support coordinator at SCIA down in Wollongong.
We are back for 2025 on Have the Nerve, and you're listening to Have the Nerve Shorts from the internet. Today, we're going to talk about a TikTok that's pretty long, and I didn't actually realize TikTok allowed videos that went for more than 90 seconds, but here we are. And so it's a woman called Can See Can't See, and she shares a story about her time on a cruise ship. Now, last year we also talked about cruise ships, and it just seems to be a running theme for this particular section to be talking about cruise ships. But she talks about her experience as somebody who has a vision impairment, but this video covers so many topics.
It's a shame you're blind because you're quite pretty is just one of the many compliments I had this weekend on my cruise. Cruise story time, let's get into it. Now, I've never been on a cruise before and I love travelling, so I was very, very excited. It definitely got off to a jumpy start. I use a long white cane, Rick the stick, and he had to also go through one of those scanner metal detector things. And every time I travel, I always have to ask, what do you need me to do with my cane? Because everywhere is a little bit different. It's like no one knew what I should do with Rick the stick. Poor Rick. I was stood with my friend, and the next thing, this woman is at my side and just grabs my stick, and she startled me. Once I'd regained the feeling in my legs after being scared, we boarded fine with no problems. But the staff at guest services, it's almost like they didn't know what being blind meant, because they couldn't have been more unhelpful if they had tried. And I am someone who is quite low maintenance. I don't like to cause a fuss, and I like to try and do everything myself before asking for help. If you've been on a cruise, you get these cards, and that is what you load your card information onto, and that is what you use to spend. I mean, we were all inclusive, so I don't really understand why we needed to do that. But anyway, we were at a massive sort of touch screen thing that you load your details onto. Did this have voiceover? No, it didn't. Did I know what to do? No, I did not. Did the man helping me know what to do? No, he did not. He kept saying, if you're English, press English. I kept saying, I'm blind, I cannot see that. He kept saying, press English if you're English. He finally understood that I physically could not see what was on the screen. His exact words to me were, your friend do it. Now, I'm really independent and I like to try and do things for myself, because that way I'll know for next time if I ever wanted to go on a cruise on my own, I know I would be able to do it. But sometimes you just get to the stage where you are losing the will to live, and it is just easier to let your friend do it for you. Having never cruised before, I was unaware of any evacuation procedure. You have to watch a video in your cabin which will explain what to do in the event of evacuation. It was audio described, and it also had subtitles, so that was accessible. You also have a meeting point on the ship. In the event of an evacuation, that is where you go, and you also have to go there before you set sail to get your card scanned, so that one, they know you're on board, and two, that you can confirm, watched and understood any evacuation procedures. At no point was a personal evacuation plan given to me should my friend not be with me, or should I be roaming around the ship on my own. And no additional help or support was even offered. Everything on this ship was touchscreen, even the lifts. You had to press the number of the floor you were going to, and it would tell you what lift to get into. Great if the voiceover worked. So I basically couldn't go anywhere on my own on that ship because I couldn't access the lifts. The thing that scared me the most about this experience was ordering drinks. We were sat on a big table at dinner with a load of people we did not know ordering our drinks. When my drink came and I took a sip of it, it was not what I ordered. It's not very pleasant that you swallow something that you think you know what the flavour's going to be and it's not. It can also make me really anxious because I don't know what I'm drinking. Overall, the cruise was amazing, and I would say the majority of the staff were trying to be helpful. I think there was a big language barrier, and some of them probably didn't understand what the white cane meant, just like some of the passengers, because some of the comments I got were priceless. We had the classic, how many fingers am I holding up? I have a great response for that, which I'm not going to share on here. We're going to keep it PG. We had one guy come up to me and start laughing. He was like, you've got a walking stick. I mean, even if it was a walking stick, what is funny about that? And I said, no, it's a white cane. His exact response was, oh, well, you're very beautiful. Now, I think a lot of the time people sometimes feel a bit awkward when they're around someone with a disability and they're not quite sure what they can and can't say or how to act. And that's absolutely fine. But to laugh at somebody who has a mobility aid, whether it's a walking stick or a white cane, that's not okay. Honestly, the amount of people that would say, I can't believe you're blind, you're quite pretty, or I can't believe you're blind and you're on a cruise ship, I can't believe you're blind and you're in a casino. It just baffled me. Now, sometimes I think people say that because they believe that if it was them, they maybe wouldn't have the confidence to do that kind of thing. Those comments don't really faze me, because I was getting it constantly. I was starting to get a really bad complex. Like, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Maybe I should be at home. When people pass comment on your appearance, like a disabled person can't be attractive, a disabled person can't dress well, a disabled person can't go out drinking and having fun, that's when I do get a little bit offended. I did not let it ruin my trip, and I drank my body weight in Baileys, and I had an amazing time. Flight back from Hamburg with EasyJet ruffled my feathers. I boarded the cabin crew, spoke to my friend as if I wasn't there. Has your friend flown before? I said, yes, I have. She then proceeded to talk to my friend, say, is she aware of the emergency landing procedure? To which I say, yes, I am. Then she says to my friend, are you able to help her in case of an emergency? And I'm like, yes, she is. I'm not invisible. Talk to me. Even my friend got annoyed and said, you can speak to her. Not put me off going on a cruise, and I'm always going to face challenges and obstacles. But that's why I do what I do, is to help make things more accessible. If people like me aren't trying it out, then companies aren't going to know to make their stuff accessible. And it's actually a good thing that I experience this kind of stuff, because I can feed it back and hope they make these improvements. And then this is just going to make an experience for somebody else with a disability.
So I didn't really know where to start. But let's just start at the beginning, shall we? So her experience with actually getting on the cruise ship, and then the accessibility point of actually boarding, and then if you speak English, select English on the screen. She couldn't see that, so there was no accessibility option for her. Thoughts, and have you had something similar?
I think my experience on the cruise ships have been like entirely different to this lady, and it might have been because of our different disabilities. So my disability is cerebral palsy, that affects my walking, balance and lower limbs, and a lot of spasticity. I find the cruises very accessible. I know when we go to book on a cruise, we try and join the cruise ship, board the cruise ship as early as possible. And whilst it is difficult, like, it has its perks. Like, my family always make me wear shorts so I'm more obvious, so I can get stuck in a chair and bypass the line. So that's a win. I've had a few iffy experiences on the cruise ship, but they outweigh the positive experiences. I think more generally, like as we've talked about on the previous podcast, there's a lot more that we have to think about when we travel than the general population, and you don't know what will pop up. And in my experience, the staff on the cruise ship have been great. It's more so the attitudes of other passengers that don't see your disability, which I think would be the case in the TikToker's experience with her vision impairment and not seeing her cane and everything like that.
And so she then talks about in the video about how you want to be as independent as possible. So in her situation, she wanted to learn how to figure this out for herself because she might have to come across it again. And the discussion that she had on TikTok was about how you relinquish the independence and then let somebody do it for you because you're just so tired of having to try and be independent for yourself. Now, this could be in any situation. This is not just cruise ship related, because this is something that I think all of us have unanimously experienced, where you might have had a situation where it's just too frustrating for somebody or a situation to understand your circumstance. So then you're relinquishing the independence and then going, okay, yeah, etc. can do it for me, then I guess it will just be easier.
You know, I know we're kind of relating this to our own experiences, and although I haven't been on a cruise, I do have somewhat of an experience with that, the screens. Like a lot of hotels in Europe have these kind of screens similar to buildings in Sydney, where you kind of sign in and it takes a photo of you, you know, and then you have access to the building for the rest of the day. It's so weird, you know, the amount of kind of roundtables that we do where we are invited as consultants to talk about access and these kind of things. And the first thing I get to at the office or the hotel, whatever it is, are these screens where they say, just sign in here. So the screen's up high. There's no one down low, mind you, coming to consult on access. And the initial part of it to get into your building, the camera can't even see me. So more often than not, when I go to these things, I just have a photo on my chest of some dude behind me that was in the line. So it's like this things going around of this dude on two people's profiles. So, you know, like it's interesting that things like that aren't flagging with people. I did notice from the video that, you know, the screens and stuff, and that was all well and good, but the voiceover didn't work. So it may well have been accessible to her, but, you know, it's about checking and maintaining these things. But you're right. There's so many times where we just, it's too tiring. You know, we have to educate all day, every day, because not everybody knows what's going on with us. And I don't expect everybody to know what my injury is and how I function. I would love just common decency, you know, like a bit of critical thinking before asking certain things or doing certain things. But yeah, it does get to that. You know, I don't want to educate every single day. Other people don't do that. So why am I expected to do that?
Society or holidays, cruising, travel, they try to make things as accessible as possible, but there's always something little that doesn't go to plan. They might have the screen readers set up at the correct height, but then the one down low is out of order, or there'll be one left and and I use the term loosely, able-bodied people try and push in because they don't want to wait for the escalators or use the stairs or what have you.
I just think the funniest experience I've had with the emergency. So like prior to this experience, I'd flown many times on a plane. We kind of traveled for about a month overseas. And then this was so bizarre. But this was when we were traveling in Australia. So, you know, no communication errors here. Like, no, we're, you know, very clear. And the lady came up to where I was sitting, and before anyone else had got on the plane, and she got the book out. And this has never happened before. Usually I just sit through the thing like everyone else, and nobody mentions me being in a chair. But this lady came up and she said, this is our evacuation thing. These are the oxygen that come out of the roof. And she said, and just so you know, if we have time, we'll help. And I said, oh, okay, thanks. Thank you so much. My hero. When you have time, though. So that was just very interesting to me. You know what? I actually really appreciated that. I totally get it. I understand. But it's 2025 now. Come on, people. You can figure it out.
There was something that she mentioned in the video which really grinds my gears, and that is a lack of evacuation procedure. Last year I did a graduate certificate in public policy, and I did a whole I did 3 assignments based on the lack of accessibility when it comes to evacuation procedures. But it's a couple of different things, right? So you're on the water, you have a disability, and they don't have a specific evacuation policy that they should be informing you about. I don't know if they did inform you, Laura, at the time where you came on, but in this lady's case, no. But that's literally everywhere.
So on the cruise ship, when we did the booking, you can register that you need special assistance. So we went and did the muster call, you know, as we would need to. And then if there was an incident on board, I'd have people assigned to help me evacuate the ship. I never want it to get to that point, but I'm thinking how big the cruise ships are, how many people are on there that are elderly or have disabilities. It'd be very scary. And I had a situation recently with not necessarily, they might have the evacuation procedure in place, but oftentimes it's the design of the building. Like I was up at the Kudos Bank Arena to see Comedian. I was there with my CP, and my sister was recovering from a dislocation, so she was on crutches, and we were up one end of the hall, and there was basically one lift working that was at the other end of the building. So even just to get out of that building on a normal night, we had to go against the crowd to try and reach the accessible exit. So it got me thinking, what happens if there was a real emergency? We'd all be screwed.
I would like people, when they have that conversation with us, I would just love them to say what they're actually saying. I don't think they realize what they're saying. So what I'm saying is, you're really not that important. I could care less whether you die or not. Like, that's what you're saying. Say it. Like, and you know what? I come at this to understanding that this comes from the top. You know, people are only doing what they're being told to do, what they're trained to do. I think what I do recognize sometimes is that the initiative is missing a little bit. I totally understand that there are procedures and processes in place for you to follow, and you've been trained a certain way. But that doesn't stop you, though, from picking up on something like this. You know, it's not hard for you to just treat us a little bit better. Think about what you're saying to us. And if you notice that you're saying to me, if we have time, I'll help you evacuate this dangerous aircraft. Maybe if you think that sounds weird, then probably maybe give that feedback a bit higher up in your organization, because you're right. If you're feeling weird when you're saying that, it's because it's weird.
Yeah, I think I agree wholeheartedly with what Heidi said. I think when people think of accessibility, just remember that it can happen to anyone at any stage of your life. So even though it might be, not important for you now, it might be important in 10 years' time. You never know.
I just don't think people realize that how language is important. You can't control what people say. People are going to say what they say and how they say it, and everyone's got their own beliefs. But I think when you're in a professional setting and you're providing customer service, there's a level of language there that you should be using to treat everybody equally. It's not hard to do. What I want you to understand is not that you made me feel lesser of a person. It's that I had my injury nearly 16 years ago now, and I spent 7 months in rehab and then another year and a half building my confidence and independence so that I could do these things by myself or with friends, whoever, so that I could articulate what I needed, so that I could advocate for myself. And what you've done in under a minute is negate 16 years, 7 months, and then a year and a half worth of building this up. You've just told me, what'd you do that for? What's the point of that? Because I don't see you as an equal human. I don't see you as doing what we do. You guys don't get married. You guys don't have relationships. You don't dress nice. Sometimes I kind of have to lay it out for people to really understand what some of us have been through. Everyone's been through stuff, but I don't talk to people like that when I'm out. So I don't negate people's personal life experiences when I'm out. And I just don't think they realize that that's what they're doing.
So we absolutely bang on about education relentlessly. Like, I think this is probably like our 17th billionth episode on the podcast where we've talked about education being a primary concern / solution to a lot of the problems, right? Do you reckon anyone listens?
I think there's a time and a place. I think even though I might have this situation and have that conversation with people, that's not their priority at the time. They're there to work, or they're on their way home, or whatever. So it's not key in their mind. So I totally get it. I forget heaps of stuff when I talk to people when I'm out. I think it's that same taking a little bit of initiative. Don't forget that many of us are successful in what we do. We travel, we have relationships, we make tough decisions, we pay bills, we pay taxes, we do all this stuff. So it's just remembering that we have come from somewhere. We've learnt a lot in our time, in addition to what anyone else would. So it's just, we're just people, man. Oh my gosh.
I think, as Hides and you said, too pretty. You're too pretty to be disabled. You're too young to be disabled, or you're working or you're driving, so you can't be disabled. As we've said, we're still working full time, paying taxes.
No one's going, you're really beautiful for someone who can walk properly and, who doesn't seem to have a problem with their mobility. You're really beautiful. Could you imagine?
I think we should be doing it the other way, Susan. I think we should be saying, you are way too good looking to be walking around here. Spinal injury now.
Have you tried a disability?
Yeah, have you tried it?
Oh, dear. In those situations, if you think it, it's a weird thing to think, to say, then go ahead and say out loud.
Yeah.
I kind of don't want to hear it. She talks about how at the end of the video, how people were talking to her friend on behalf of her, which no doubt all of us have had time and time again.
I didn't know what having a spinal cord injury actually meant other than sitting down. I just thought you just sat down. That's it. Learned all the stuff and was horrified at the beginning, and now it's second nature. But it's that similar thing that I said before. People doing that have just negated my 16 years of experience in 2 seconds by talking to my partner and not me. When I asked the question, I just used my money to pay for it. Why did you give him the change? Because so I understand lack of exposure. I understand being embarrassed and maybe not knowing how to handle the situation. But I think that's something where employers need to go back to training their staff properly, not just kind of throwing them in there and see how you go. There's always going to be a deep end moment, but there needs to be something there about communication. I'm the same. Even if I work with somebody who communicates different, initially you might feel a little bit embarrassed if you have to ask somebody to repeat it a few times. But that's just an opportunity for you to say, actually, is there another way you'd prefer to communicate? I say this in one of our videos. Do you want me to put it on your phone or my phone, or can I write it down? I'm really having difficulty understanding you. Just ask, how else would you like to communicate? I don't know. There's other ways. People communicate so many different ways.
I haven't had that, any experiences like that myself. People can see me, at a restaurant or at a hotel or what have you, and the disability is not always obvious. But I find a lot of my peers have had experiences like that. Like, we have a fortnightly peer support group in our office down here where we go out for lunches. There's usually myself and about 5 participants in wheelchairs and their families and their support person. And I find whenever, waitresses or people are coming around to ask for their orders, they'll always automatically go to ask the family member or the carer. And it's like, they're in a chair, they're not stupid. So I think people just make assumptions, and I don't think they're being intentional about it. It's just, they haven't had that education.
I do remember in high school there was a girl called Melissa, and she was 2 years older than me, and we had the same roll call in the morning in high school. And I actually have no idea what her disability is, but she was in a power chair, largely non-verbal, and this was 1999, guys, but like we didn't have iPads, didn't have a mobile phone that we're, so she had a board, right, that had the entire alphabet on it, and she would literally point and start spelling out all the words. And so your job was to figure out what the word was before she finished the word, because it was easier for her to have the conversation. People were actually really resistant to communicating with her because I feel like the communication for them was probably so affronting that they didn't know how, or maybe they didn't have the patience or whatever was going on. The exposure that people have to disability is so far and few between for people, and disability is so broad and it encompasses so many things. Do I blame people for if I'm at a kebab store with my friend and I go and order a kebab, and even though I'm saying it, they're like looking at my friend and communicating with him instead, and it's a super weird experience? Not really, because I feel like it could have started, who's on your TV? Who's your reporters? Who's your elected representative?
And I guess you were hungry and just wanted your kebab.
I really wanted the kebab, guys. I mean, I was giving you the card.
I think it's also a two-way street. I think if you are somebody who likes to, who chooses to communicate a certain way, you can't expect people to know how to do that. Lack of exposure. People have not come across this before. So it's a two-way street. You can't expect people to know how to communicate, and you can't expect people to be 100% comfortable in that situation either. So if you do communicate in a different way that's not maybe the regular that people where you're going would normally see, a little, like a little note or something where you can kind of prompt someone, this is how I communicate. I used to have a friend who also had a word board, and it was set out quite different with colors. So it was easier to anticipate what the word was going to be for him. But he had to teach me how to do that. And that was actually a really cool experience. It's another form of communication. You're getting your brain active. You're learning more. You're learning about people. So if you come across that, I wish people would take that opportunity to actually learn and do that. You're making a big difference to somebody by taking the effort to communicate with them, when ordinarily they might be in spaces where people are like that, and they just turn away and just avoid, so I don't have to be in that weird situation of communication.
I think what I'm realizing here in this conversation is that maybe it's more about considering these things that seem ultimately challenging at first just an opportunity so somebody else will also benefit, but like everything is an opportunity, rather than thinking that it's too hard. That person's board is too hard. No, it's an opportunity for you to personally learn about how people communicate. That screen in the beginning of the TikTok when she's explaining the screen, too hard, too challenging. No, it's an opportunity for you to learn more about how this lady absorbs the communication there. Yeah. She needs verbal cues. She needs something else. Like, she needs something that she can, Yeah. Okay. Good one. All right. Look at it. We've sold it now. We've sold it. We're going to Parliament now. Yes. SCIA has inclusion training that we are happy to come on board for.
Inclusion at scia.org.au. We are, though. I think what differs us, our inclusion training from a lot of people is that, we're peer led. We have developed it ourselves from our own experiences as well as our members, and it's really informal. It's quite relaxed. It's a safe space. No questions too silly. And it's short and sweet. It's purely just little reminders more than anything. Everybody knows about this stuff. Common courtesy. We all learnt it. I just think in the hustle and bustle, sometimes we tend to forget. So ours are just little reminders rather than, you're doing this wrong. It's not about that.